Good afternoon. My name is Gabe, and as Chairman of the Associated Student Speakers Program, I'd like to welcome you to our fourth program of the fall quarter. Today we have with us author John Sack, whose recent book is entitled Lieutenant Calley. Mr. Sack has written about war crimes for the past 5 years and has spent a great deal of time as a correspondent in Vietnam. In his recent novel, Lieutenant Calley, he discusses the 100 days he spent in private and detailed conversation with Lieutenant Calley. Mr. Sack will discuss Lieutenant Calley's own ideas from his own lips and his own conscience. This is Lieutenant Calley's only autobiography. Mr. Sack asked me to invite you all down a little farther down so we can have a nice group session over here. So could you please move down as far as possible? Right. Are you finished introducing me? I'm finished. Why introduce? Author John Sack. I'm not going to give a whole speech. I'd really like to open it up to questions. Let me just tell you about the story of My Lai as I see it, because I went to Vietnam as a correspondent for Esquire in 1966. And even in 1966, I really appreciate people coming closer. And then, even in 1966, the regimental commander of the Marines was telling me, everyone here is VC. Can't tell the difference between the Vietnamese and the VC. This is in 1966. 1966, Lieutenant Calley was just a private, and he's in Texas, learning how to right shoulder arms. And the order comes down from General Westmoreland on Quang Ngai province. Quang Ngai is the province that My Lai is in. Westmoreland says, search it, destroy it. And the first thing that happens if you're a Vietnamese is you start getting, 1966, these leaflets out of the sky. Leaflet 244-28667. And it's got a picture of a Vietnamese house on it, and the house is in flames, and in front of the house there's a woman lying on the ground, there's her baby on the ground, the husband is lying on the ground bleeding, the blood is coming out of his eyes and his nose, his ears and his mouth, and the Army has printed the blood in red, and on the bottom of the leaflet it says, you help the VC, we will not hesitate to destroy your village. But of course the Vietnamese can't read, they're illiterate. So the next thing they know, out of the sky, you all know the stuff, the bullets, the spinning pieces of wire that go 1 mile a second that come out of the grenades, the ball bearings, one guava bomb has 200,000 ball bearings in it. The nails, the helicopters drop rockets, the rockets blow open, and 1,000 nails come down on the Vietnamese people. So in 1966, when I was there, the soldiers were saying, I want to burn this whole country down and start again with Americans. And the pilots were singing, bomb the schools, bomb the churches, bomb the rice fields too, show the children in the courtyards what the napalm bombs do. And the generals were saying this operation deprives the VC of their population resource. 1967, Lieutenant Calley is a sergeant, he's an officer candidate down at Fort Benning, Georgia. And by that time, that province was just death everywhere. We had dropped dimethylarsenic acid and wiped out all of their rice. The rats in the fields couldn't eat rice and would run into the towns, so the bubonic plague in the towns was up 100 times. The elephants were all dead or had gone to Cambodia. The tigers, you could go out now in that province and you fire your rifle and tigers start coming from all around. They think there's been a battle and they come in to eat more of the dead bodies. You walk along the seashore in Quang Ngai province in 1967 and you stand and look at the seashore, and out of the sand come arms and legs. The Vietnamese have buried their dead so quickly in a hurry to get away that they buried them under 3 inches of sand. And as rigor mortis sets in, the arms and the legs come out of the sand, making a picket fence, and the soldiers come along and they write, "We was here," on a piece of toilet paper, and they hang it on the fingers. 1967. 1968, when Lieutenant Calley gets to Vietnam, the Quang Ngai province is already 75% destroyed. 75% of those villages are My Lais already. Smoldering ruins, the people dead underneath it, or a few survivors living underneath it, or the people in the refugee camps. The Army says to Lieutenant Calley, "We've got a couple of villages left, My Lai 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, destroy it." Lieutenant Calley says, "Roger." As a matter of fact, there was a briefing the night before. Captain Medina tells the company the night before, "We're going in tomorrow to My Lai 4 at 0720. We've got, excuse me, we've got the 105, 155, 175 millimeter howitzers, the 30, the 50 caliber machine guns, the rocket launchers, grenade launchers, miniguns. Charlie Company is going in at 0730. Lieutenant Calley is there listening to Captain Medina. Somebody raises his hand. Captain Medina says, "We're going to destroy everything. We're going to kill everything." Soldier raises his hand and says, "Sir, do you mean women and children?" Captain Medina says, I mean everything. Cows, dogs, cats, pigs, chickens, everything." Next morning, Vietnamese in My Lai. Farmer wakes up, walks out to the west, sees the GIs there, starts yelling, "GI's number one, GI's number..." He's killed. Women get together, they're rounded up. Soldier says to them, "Take off your clothes, I want boom boom." Women all start yelling, "No, no, 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 no." They're killed. Children come out saying, "I want chop chop, chop chop." And their mother is with them and their father is with them. Father's name is Pham Phan. And he lived through the thing. He said that the soldiers took everybody over to a ditch. There were 100 people there. He saw a little officer, white officer, only about this high, signal with his hand. Soldiers opened up and killed everybody. All the soldiers were doing it that day, chasing the ducks with the knives, killing the cows with the bayonets, raping. 18-year-old girl was being raped by 3 soldiers simultaneously. Yeah, figure it out. 12-year-old girl, they pulled her clothes off her and said, "Let's see what she's made of." And there was a picture of that in Life magazine. 6-year-old girl, soldier picked her up, carried her into a little brick house, stayed with her for 10 minutes, and then left and threw a grenade in afterwards. And everybody was yelling, "I got one, I got another one." Bang, shoot a woman and yell, "She'll be in the big rice paddy in the sky tonight." And at the end of it, around 10 o'clock in the morning, the village of My Lai is, of course, just covered with bodies. Soldier says, "God, it's as if they poisoned the water and everybody drank the water and they're just lying around like dead flies." Captain Medina gets on the horn and he radios the battalion commander. Says, "Diamond Head 6, this is Charlie 6, I got a body count." 300 bodies. General Westmoreland cables the company. Outstanding action. Congratulations to the officers and men of Charlie Company, 1st to the 20th. Pentagon announces it in Washington. New York Times carries it on the front page, another American offensive. Life magazine carries, oh yes. A year later, Life magazine carries the pictures. And everyone looks at it. Oh gosh, everyone says, that's just terrible. Women and children. Why, that's a violation of of Title 10 of the United States Code, Chapter 47, Section 918. That's murder, people say, yeah. Well, sure, of course, that's what it is. It's murder. That's what we do in Vietnam. We murder people. That's what I want to say, and let me ask the questions now. Just to brief you on it, I'm probably Lieutenant Calley's closest friend. I've been with him the last year and a half. I spoke to him by telephone about 2 days ago, in fact. And I worked with him on the stories that he did in Esquire magazine and on this book that the bookstore is pushing, which is his own one, right. No, I didn't.
Well, okay, I was just saying, because all these things went on, that Calley is no more guilty than anybody else?
Calley is guilty. Calley is a murderer. Calley had a choice that day, and he chose to murder the people. He's responsible for his choice, as all of us are. If you're drafted, you have a choice. You can still say, hell no, I won't go. And if you get into the Army, it's because you operate on your choice. If you go to Vietnam, you do still have a choice of deserting or of going to Vietnam. If you're in My Lai 4, you have a choice of kill or be killed. That was the choice Calley had, and he chose to kill. He is guilty for making that choice. I'd say that millions and millions of people are equally guilty. Were there any Viet Cong actually in the village? Dig it. Everybody in Vietnam is a Viet Cong. What do I mean? Do I mean that they're walking around with Mao's little book, memorizing the phrases? I'll come to that in a second. No, they're not. Are they studying Das Kapital? No. I mean that that the people of Vietnam have been fighting the foreigners since the foreigners first arrived in 1864. And that in order to get American aid in 1955, Ngo Dinh Diem thought up this name for him. VC, Viet Cong, Vietnamese communists. Told the Americans they're communists, those people that Senator McCarthy has everybody shook up about, Senator Joe McCarthy. So we started calling them the VC. What are the VC? They're everybody who's against us. By this time, everybody in Vietnam is against us. Now, are the people of My Lai dangerously against us? Are they a real threat to the GIs? Right. The soldiers had been there for 2 months before. They'd been shot at all the time. They'd be shot at outside of a village. They'd go running into the village. Where are the VC? Where are the VC? Nobody around but a bunch of old men and women and children go running up to a woman, typical Vietnamese. She's 100 years old. She's pregnant. Where are the VC? Combien? I don't know. And after a lot of experiences like this, they finally learned that the VC were the old men who were shooting at them, the old women who were feeding in the ammunition, and the children who were picking up the mines, relocating the mines. 2 days before My Lai, Lieutenant Calley was out on patrol, and there was an explosion. God, and a little 5-year-old boy had half of his face ripped off, and they all ran to help him. And then they found out why it had happened. The boy had been digging up mines, putting a pin in the safety hole. He had already collected 5 mines. He was going to take them to another area for the VC and plant them there. 5-year-old boy. If Lieutenant Calley had made up his mind there, instead of in the United States, or back at the fire base, to resist, not to follow what the Army told him. If he decided in My Lai, I will not kill these people, then he would have gone beyond them, between My Lai 4 and My Lai 5, and many of them would have been firing at him from behind, and his company probably would have been close to being wiped out. No. Has everyone heard the question? Has Lieutenant Calley made the distinction in his mind? I'll answer that part last. has Lieutenant Calley made the distinction in his mind between properly going into a village and meeting an enemy, which is armed combat, and going into a village that you haven't received fire from and committing murder? And, I mean, is he aware of the rules of war? Now, listen. You said it seems silly to talk about the rules of war. It's not silly. There's some good rules of war. That Geneva Convention goes on for 200 pages. That if those rules were followed, we would only be killing tens of thousands of people instead of hundreds of thousands of people. So I'm not going to knock the rules of war. They're okay. But don't ask for Lieutenant Calley to be aware of it, because the GIs are not aware of it, because it is absolutely not observed in Vietnam. The rules of war are a publicity scam in Vietnam. You go up to the army, you look at a field full of dead people, and you get your army publicity man, I guess, and you say to him, gee whiz, what about the rules of war, the Geneva Convention? And he'll say, okay, Geneva Convention, he'll show it to you, Convention de Genève, relative à la protection des personnes civiles, civilians. And he'll tell you that all those dead people are not civilians. That old man lying over there, he was hiding behind a tree, so he couldn't be a civilian. I'll come and then I'll come to that. And a woman, they'll point out, was running away from the helicopters. God, running away from an American helicopter. She's not a civilian. She doesn't come under the protection of the Geneva Convention. 300 people lying in a field. They're not civilians because that was a free fire zone. And every civilian knows he can't be in a free fire zone. The Army just looks at the dead people and says, they're not civilians, they're dead. If they were civilians, what are they doing being dead? So Lieutenant Calley says they accused me of murder, premeditated murder. They're right. It was premeditated murder. We sat up the whole night before, premeditating it. We loaded up our magazines with bullets. How premeditated can you get? Except in Vietnam, they call that a combat assault. Go ahead.
Well, the difference I wanted to make was that in most cases, if somebody came into a village and there was some kind of...
Why don't you stand up so other people could hear, could you? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, in most cases, if you came into a village and there was some type of hostile fire, usually what you do is drop back and you get time. Or in other words, you either call it attack area, you call it intervention, or you something like that. The thing was the personalness of the slaughter. I mean, there's been situations where they've wiped out villages. I've seen it where they've used an impersonal method. Period. They walked in, they did it personally. They raided the village, they whatever they did, but it was on such a personal, close-hand nature. Whereas in proper reality, closer to them, and they can see more. Because most of the time, you just don't see what's on the machine.
You're right. You're a Vietnam veteran. Yeah. From what division? 20th. You weren't in infantry. Okay. Yeah. Gee, I'm not denying there's a psychological difference between shooting somebody in the face and sitting back in the Oval Room of the White House and picking up the red phone. There's a tremendous difference on the person who does it, psychologically, but morally or practically, I don't think it makes any difference. It doesn't make any difference to the person who's killed.
The fact is, in the way procedures that the Army would take in wiping out a village would be that they would more do it by attack air, because it's easier to say that somebody got caught in a bombing than it is to say that they got caught in a platoon.
Fine, that would be the normal way. If luck were with Lieutenant Calley, they would have taken My Lai 4 by their normal way. They would have landed outside. They would have called TAC air, which is tactical air, which are the F-4 Phantoms, and they would have said, drop some napalm on them. 2 planes would have come in, dropped napalm, killed everyone in the village. Soldiers would walk in and say, gee whiz, we killed a few civilians that time too. Now the reason they didn't do that, our normal procedure in Vietnam, is that this was the Tet Offensive. You're up in I Corps near Quezon. Quezon was under fire, and every Phantom jet in the area was just hitting the area around Quezon. They had to send in the infantry for this one. And the infantry, of course, is the only group that's charged with war crimes. Can I take another guy?
Yeah, in your book, one, you didn't stress so much the pillaging of the village. Two, you stressed the fact that when the group in the ditch, you said that Milo was supposed to take care of the guy. Calley told him to take care of the guy, take care of the people. Then he came back, and he said, I told you to take care of these people. Now, you just said that everybody was killing everybody. In the book, you said it was two people and Calley who did the actions.
No, remember, I'm speaking to you now from my point of view. Lieutenant Calley in the book is speaking from his point of view. There are all sorts of things going on in the village that he didn't see, but other people have reported. Since he didn't see it, he can't very well put it in his book. In my talk, I can tell you what the other soldiers were doing because I've seen the CID statements, I've read Hirsch's book and Hammer's book, and talked to some of the soldiers themselves. So that's why I tell you about what the other soldiers were doing. I didn't understand the other part of the question.
And secondly, how does he feel? Does he feel that it was his duty to do it? Or does his conscience hurt him?
He feels it was his duty to do that. I tell you, it was his duty to do that. You got to dig it before you go to Vietnam. That's what they're asking you to do over there. If you don't believe it, ask half of the infantrymen who come back, and they'll tell you that that's really what they're required to do. If you can't find an infantryman, listen to the testimony of the Winter Soldiers Commission or of John Kerry's group in Washington, who are saying that this is what they found themselves ordered to do once they got to Vietnam. So it was his duty. He realizes that. He feels great pangs of conscience for having participated in the whole war. But he would not separate My Lai from the rest of the war, because My Lai was a very common thing happening in Vietnam. As a matter of fact, in a couple of days, there'll be a story out, another story by Seymour Hersh. It turns out that My Lai was not the only massacre in Quang Ngai. That day, there was another massacre, apparently just as big or as bigger, in the same province on the same day, another company.
The front cover of Esquire magazine, the first one, was rather absurd. Can you elaborate on the feelings for that?
The first article in Esquire had a cover you may have seen. Calley was there with a big grin on his face, looking like, all American. I mean, they looked like the photographer fed him 10 apple pies and then told him to pose, and his arms were around 4 Vietnamese children. Everybody found this in terrible taste. People refused to buy the magazine. It didn't sell very well. Advertisers canceled, all that kind of thing. Obviously, it is in bad taste because everyone says so. I can't see it because I look at that picture, and knowing Calley, I say, great, at last they've got an honest picture of him. Because I know the guy, and that's what he looks like, and when he sees kids, that's what he wants to do, throw his arms around them.
Was there much protest, on the part of, Calley's counselors and his
Oh, no, they approved it. They approved it.
Did Calley approve the picture?
Of course, he posed for it and certainly approved it.
Yeah, well, there was much talk about he didn't want to do things, but he needed the money for his defense, so that, he was sort of worked around by Esquire.
Not so. Can everyone hear the questions, incidentally? That's not so. On this book, he has the copyright on the book. He's the author of the book. He has absolute say over everything that appears in. Just the other day, England asked to buy the rights, and they wanted to call it Who Me by Lieutenant William Calley. And they're paying quite a bit of money for it, and he refused. He said he didn't like the title. Made him go back and think of another title. No, he's the author and has total rights over everything that appears. And that's in all of his contracts. I'm not even allowed to see. theoretically, I'm not allowed to write anything that he doesn't approve. I'd certainly say anything if I knew anything about him I'd certainly tell you anything about him that I knew that I wasn't allowed to write, but there is nothing like that. I want to get people who weren't in.
I get the impression from what he said and what Calley said that he doesn't object so much to the verdict and finding that he was guilty as much as he objects to the starting of him. And that, in fact, that belief title is very good, from what I understand. Because, like he says, it was already in practice of Nam by the time he got there. So therefore, probably everyone who was in Nam before him should be tried, along with everyone who was in office. And they go around and everyone else is going to say that's very good.
That's what I would say. Calley can't quite bring himself to say it that way because he's still an Army officer. It's not even so much believing in the Army as believing in his buddies. I mean, the guys in Vietnam were his friends. They risked their life for him. He risked his life for them. He became very close to them. He doesn't want to hear himself saying, try those other people also, send them to jail. He doesn't want to, his mind rebels anytime he finds himself thinking of it that way. Well, if I'm guilty, they're guilty, and you've got to punish them also. So he would say, he feels that what we're doing in Vietnam is wrong and is bad, and he's aware that he's being singled out. He doesn't say, why me? And he points out that if you're in the Army, you're singled. That's the first thing. That's what happens to you when you get in the Army. You get into basic training, and the sergeant says to you on the first day, "You clean out the latrine." Why me? Oh, you dumb mother. Why not you? The Army singled somebody out to bear the rap for atrocities. You don't ask why me. You say, "Yes, sir, I'll do it." When a soldier goes to Vietnam, the moment he lands, he's in violation of the Geneva Convention. He's carrying with him an M16 rifle whose round is a dum-dum bullet. This is according to prosecution testimony at Lieutenant Calley's trial. The bullet of the M16 is made to wobble back and forth in flight. It hits you in your shoulder and it comes out of the top of your head. So that's a violation of the Geneva Convention. He's certainly told to burn down Vietnamese houses. That's a violation of the Geneva Convention so strong that the Geneva Convention calls it a grave breach, and every signatory to the Geneva Convention is pledged to seek out those people when they return to their civilian life in any country and bring them before the courts of that country. Since the war is probably illegal under the rules of the war of aggression, you're committing a crime the moment you land. The more people you kill, of course, the more blood is on your hands. I want to get people who, go ahead.
Assuming major condition terms, was there some kind of war like World War II?
Yeah.
What can you do to, and the question of being killed or being killed, what can you do to prevent something like this to happen? We still say this will be supposed to be American life.
If you're a soldier, I'll tell you the answer to that.
No, not soldiers,
Yeah.
but your General Esquire or something, it has to be your policy to train people, because I had to do this for a while, train people that are going over there so they can learn what they can do and what they can't do and what is right and what isn't right. But what you can't do. You got people with IQs of 75, and you got people.
But I have an IQ of 130 or something, and I don't know what else I would do. I mean, if a little 5-year-old kid is going to take my life, I guess I would kill him also. So you're a Vietnam veteran also. They have group therapy sessions in New York for Vietnam veterans. I'm asking you a question from the point of view of what a soldier can do. And it very commonly comes up there. The guys start talking about the atrocities they committed. We were in the 25th Division. This is what we did. Oh, we were in the 1st Division. This is what we did. And they'll finally say, well, what could we have done to prevent atrocities? And the veterans will all agree, we could have died. Now, what can America do to stop the soldiers from doing it? They could leave Vietnam. I don't see any other way we could stop it other than leaving Vietnam. I don't think we're going to leave it either. Yes. Yeah. Who is entitled to prosecute war criminals for grave breaches of the Geneva Convention like murder or like burning villages? Any signatory is not only entitled but obliged to prosecute. If a soldier here has burned down a village, if he's murdered a Vietnamese in cold blood, and I promise you more than 100,000 have, Vietnamese civilian, theoretically, if he's in the Dolomites on a picnic, the Italian Carabinieri are obliged under international treaty to climb to the top of the mountain, arrest him, and bring him and put him on trial in Bologna. And they're violating a treaty with the United States of America if they don't. Who is entitled to prosecute Lieutenant Calley? I guess any nation of the world could prosecute him in the name of mankind. The VC could. Yes, that would. You wouldn't need an international tribunal. That's a good point. I never thought of this. But as a matter of fact, a peace-loving country, or whatever that is, but say Sweden or Switzerland, really would have the right to start arresting all sorts of American soldiers and trying them and executing them. Might be a clever thing for countries to do that wanted to end the war. Just every American soldier who comes back from Vietnam and goes off to Mexico to look for the mushrooms is captured in Mexico City and hanged. That might put some pressure on the United States government.
Well, what I mean is, like, say these international communities they wanted to reach people inside the United States, like, could they get together, sort of some type of a task force to enter the United States forcibly?
I'm not sure how successful they'd be, but there's certainly a precedent for it. They'd be acting under precedent because war crimes were committed from 1941 to 1945. Many war crimes were committed in Central Europe against the Gypsies, against the Jews, against people who were captured. All sorts of murders were committed, and an international task force of nations was assembled and moved into Germany and prosecuted the people who killed, prosecuted the men who gave them their orders, wiped the government off the face of the earth, and occupied that country for 25 years so it could never commit atrocities against mankind again. So there is a precedent.
So, what in fact do you think would actually happen if they tried this?
Sure, I'm sure the VC would, if they could take the United States, would like to do it to stop, just block off the ports and stop people from going over there. But I mean, it's a highly theoretical question.
Do you think that the activities, the personal atrocity that they by throughout Vietnam, not speaking of napalm or gunship, individual GIs, other units?
Are you a Vietnam veteran? From what unit? Were you in infantry then? Platoon leader. I had friends in the first Cav. I had one friend in the first Cav in 1966, came back to the United States and landed at Travis Air Force Base, and people started calling him a baby killer. Got out of the subway station in New York, and people were following him yelling baby killer. This is what they were yelling at the first Cav then. I certainly know a lot of guys in the first cav who have done it. They may not have done it in your platoon, or maybe you want to say they did do it in your platoon. It's quite possible you kept a really strong grip over your platoon, as Colonel Herbert kept a strong grip over his battalion. Colonel Herbert's battalion was ordered to kill women and children by the general. Colonel Herbert himself canceled the general's order, said, I'm countermanding the general's order. We're still underneath the Geneva Convention here. Were you going to say that it is common or that it isn't? Well, what I did was to try to understand how common it was in 1968, and incidentally, exactly when My Lai was happening, I was at Fort Benning, Georgia. Now, a lot of guys, after their Vietnam service, come back to Fort Benning to the 197th Brigade, and so you get companies there that are randomly selected companies from areas all over Vietnam. And you'd get, and I was with these people for about 5 weeks, and in the course of it, one after another would tell either me or would tell his buddies around the campfire of the kind of things that he had done in Vietnam. I know soldiers who killed 9 civilians. I learned of soldiers who killed three little girls, 12 years old, by a stream. Captain told him to wipe them out. Soldiers knew that the captain just wanted to get a body count that would be higher than Bravo Company's body count by the end of the month. So, on the basis of that company, I estimated 10 to 20% of the soldiers, at least, 10 to 20% had committed murders and would talk about it. I don't know how many more wouldn't talk about it. Extrapolating, you get 100,000 to 200,000 soldiers would have done exactly what Lieutenant Calley is accused of doing, though not perhaps to so many people. Do you have anything about your platoon? Remember, you only have to do it for about half an hour spend 15 minutes during your tour of duty. If every soldier spent 15 minutes during his tour of duty doing what happened during My Lai, you'd wipe the whole country out. So I'm certainly not suggesting that soldiers go around day after day, hour after hour doing this. As you know, day after day, soldiers just walk and sit and wait and now smoke grass and heroin.
So is Calley saying that if he doesn't think that he doesn't want to blame anyone else besides himself, say that it's the rest of my buddy's fault too, then it shouldn't be being brought up for trial?
Well, of course, Calley wouldn't have, naturally Calley didn't want to have the trial happen, and that's understandable.
Is he saying that we should just forget it happened, it was war, and that's it?
No. He's saying it happened. It happened It happened so much in Vietnam that don't you understand? What he's saying is, don't you understand that what's happened in My Lai is what happens in Vietnam? He's just astonished that anybody investigated My Lai. I'm astonished also. Why didn't they investigate Saigon? I mean the same month, 1 month before, in fact. We wiped out half of Saigon the month before. There were VC, the VC and their Tet Offensive came into Saigon. The people of Saigon were right with the VC. With the places that the VC attacked that month, the police headquarters, the radio stations, the presidential palace, all of the people living in the neighborhood left the neighborhood 10 days before. During those 10 days, slowly moved out. The police never noticed it. Everyone not only knew there would be a VC attack on such and such a day, but they knew where it would be and moved away. And nobody, 2 million people in Saigon, told the police or told the Americans. Army immediately realized they're all VC, even in Saigon. called in the Air Force planes to start bombing Saigon, where the VC were. Wiped out half of the city. Not downtown where the correspondents are, but the Cholan, thank you, and Gia Dinh. A Canadian in Saigon that day said, Hanoi is a safer place to be than Saigon. So Lieutenant Calley is saying this is what happens in Vietnam. He's saying it's terrible, it's awful, it's bad. Let's get out of there. Let's stop all war. Let's learn that from it. Let's not just say, there's the guy who did it and go on running the war for the next 10 years.
Now that Lieutenant Calley is an American hero of sorts, in certain parts of the country, people are concerned because, Anthony is.
Is that question sarcastic? Or are you sincere?
I'm sorry, yeah. I think it's remotely possible.
The question was, now that Lieutenant Calley is a hero, would he run for political office? Wow. No, man, please. Lieutenant Calley does not think he's a hero. Lieutenant Calley says in his book, I'm a run-of-the-mill average guy. He says that he told me in no way am I a hero. I think anyone who thinks he's a hero is sick. Fortunately, I know very few people who think he's a hero. I see that phrase a lot. Americans think he's a hero. I do not meet people who think he's a hero.
How many records?
Ballad of Lieutenant Calley, which makes him out to be a hero. You know the song, My name is William Calley, I'm a soldier of this land? I think it may have sold 1 million copies. So that means that at least 1/2 of the American people are really sick. I mean, the guy who sang that song, I want to send him Melanie. Glory, glory, psychotherapy. He needs it. What?
I think you're optimistic about the percentage.
Well, I'll tell you what the percentage is according to the polls. When Lieutenant Calley was freed and that big uproar came, most Americans were against it. I think maybe 90%. So they polled that 90%. Why are you against the conviction? And the people, 20% of the people said, he's right, he's great, that's what we want to do, we want to kill those yellow bellies, he's a hero. And 70% said he's wrong, he's a murderer, but the blame does not lie on him, the blame lies on the people above him, or the blame lies on all of us. So that was what the polls show. No, he does. No, he doesn't hate the people. He feels he has to kill them because they're the enemy. I don't know how you could differentiate between Charlie Company hating Oriental people and Charlie Company hating the VC, because the groups were synonymous. But I think it's a little bit fair to blame it immediately on racism. I'm asked that question a lot. But remember, there's a lot of Oriental soldiers in the American Army. In every company, there'll usually be one Oriental, and I never was aware of any prejudice being directed against him as an Oriental. I might be wrong. You know a case.
Well, not so much that my sergeant was Oriental, but it wasn't, he was our sergeant, so
Yeah. So it's not racism then.
But the thing is, everybody in our company hated, or I shouldn't say everybody, but hated groups. I mean, I had a guy come in and said, I just ran a group over. I just ran into the building at the Cyclone. And another guy came in and said, the mail truck, they just ran over and they're out there calling the guy a hero. And he just ran across the street and run over a guy in Cyclone. And they hated groups, period. It didn't matter if they were down on Pluto Street or if they were out in the patio. They were groups.
And yet your sergeant was not a gook, It's, yeah, so therefore apparently it isn't racism. It's a hatred that you have to have because you're going to have to kill those people.
The thing is, they were slow.
Yeah.
If it was racial, they were slow, they were exempt.
Well, people, if they can't hear someone talking, tell me, and we'll try to.
They competed. I mean, I'm sure it was a tagline, in fact, they didn't want to be there. The fact is, they hated it. It was slammed on
I really know this. I wrote about this in 1966. No one believed me. No one believed me for years about the hatred of soldiers for the GI, for Orientals. I would never, I would never tell a black guy about manifestations of racism. I'll take his word for it. I'll take your word for racism against Orientals in the United States. I just think it's, just that I am not so ready to say that it's racism. First because, as I say, this guy's sergeant was an Oriental and he wasn't hated. And second, because so much of the hatred, second, because the South Vietnamese army itself hates the Vietnamese. I know in Newsweek, Emperor Hirohito just made his tour of Europe, and he was very much hated, and rocks were thrown at his car. And people said, Newsweek said one disturbing thing that this proves is that we are not so ready to forgive the Japanese as we are to forgive the white Caucasian Germans. I think that's quite unfair. If the Emperor of Germany or the Chancellor or the dictator of Germany were to make a triumphal tour of Europe now, I think he would be quite hated also. I think My Lai could happen almost as easily in a Caucasian country. I think so. Fortunately, we haven't gone to war with a Caucasian country in the recent past, though who knows? Yeah, I mean, one doesn't know until we declare war in Bolivia. But I think once we do, I think we'll find the soldiers calling them the WOGs and killing women and children there.
Yes, as an incident and a lie, as a conscience and the way to live the actors that we've observed.
Has the conscience of soldiers been awakened in Vietnam by My Lai? Guys saying no. You're absolutely right. When My Lai happened, when the news came out, the guys in the Americal, come on in. Is that the high school or what? Oh, you got a class in here? Oh, okay, I'll answer this and we can just continue to sit outside on the stairs if you want. Guys in the Americal division got a patch made, a shield-shaped patch, and on it said, "Remember My Lai." And this didn't mean remember the Alamo, or it didn't mean be careful you don't get caught. The words "Remember My Lai" were directed to the Vietnamese people, and it said, "Vietnamese, we are the Americal division. We're the guys who went to My Lai. We're a mean bunch of mothers. Get out of our way." Why don't we, there's a class in here, why don't we sit out in the sun?